My name is Monica, and I'm going to take us through how we can find languages in addition to the 18 that we've already seen. And then I'm going to share briefly some experiences about how these can be used in practice with some stories from Tanzania. If we go to here, to immigrant and refugee languages, and click on this, we get a list of additional languages that do not show up on the drop-down menu. These languages, some of them are still in progress, but all of them do have stories available in the languages. And as Ingrid said, if you do not see your language here, do not despair. Come and talk to a member of the Storybooks Canada team, and we can talk about how you can be involved in ensuring your language is represented here. One interesting thing to note, important thing to note, is that there are several African languages represented here, which is demonstrative of the ongoing collaboration with various African partners, both on the African continent and in the diaspora. So we have Amharic, for example, Oromo, Somali, and Swahili, which my husband and I actually had the honor of translating and editing all 40 stories into Swahili. So I'm going to take us into some Swahili stories, which I can do by clicking on any of the languages here. It takes you to that language. Or I'm going to do this through going through the Global Storybooks portal so that I can also access additional languages from Tanzania. So this is a very exciting part of the site, with links to storybooks in languages from these various different contexts. So here we are, Storybooks Tanzania. I'm going to go in here, and here are all 40 stories in Swahili. I'm going to choose this story, Hisia, or Feelings. So here we are in Swahili, moyo wangu unahisi vitu vingi. We can toggle with English, switching back and forth to make direct comparisons between the languages to support the learning of one or both languages and the development of metalinguistic skills. I'm now going to add an additional language of Ma, the language of the Maasai communities in Tanzania and Kenya. And so now I have 3 languages that I can toggle between. So in Tanzania, at a multilingual community learning center, which I run, we printed out a number of these stories trilingually. So each page had 3 languages printed simultaneously. Tanzania, English, a language of instruction for all post-primary schooling, and Ma, or Kimasai, which has been highly marginalized in the Tanzanian context and is muted in formal learning settings. So we have all 3 of these languages available in the books. What happened often when we gave these trilingual books to students is that they would initially begin by reading in their dominant language of literacy, which for all of them is Swahili, as that's the language of schooling. So often children would say, no, that's not the right translation. Me, I would write it this way. For Ma specifically, which is very significant, as I wasn't observing these things when they were working in Swahili and English, but using their most familiar language enables them to position themselves as experts and then make interventions in the text in that way. Significantly, also, learners who do not necessarily speak Ma were getting very excited about also sounding out these words in Ma, making connections between languages, and asking the language expert friends to teach them more about this language. The literacy engagement and investment in these literacy practices went through the roof with these trilingual texts. And maybe more importantly, these books were generative for these students. Reading these trilingual texts, these students started saying, I can do this too, and became prolific writers, actually, of their own bilingual and trilingual texts, authors and illustrators. Some of the texts I have here with me today. So these are produced by children. It expanded beyond the children. The excitement was uncontainable, burst through the walls of the library, and indeed youth and parents also got involved, and there are books here written by children, youth, and parents from the Community Learning Center in northern Tanzania. So these are some examples from Tanzania, but I do think that the principles are transferable to any context. The excitement, the literacy engagement and investment that are generated through accessing texts in your own language are definitely things that we see in any context, including definitely in Canadian contexts, Canadian homes as well. One additional little anecdote to show how these stories are meaningful and useful for language learning across different demographics and contexts. My mother has also been using these stories to learn Swahili in Ontario. So using the toggle feature, going back and forth between English and Swahili, she can make comparisons between the languages. The translations have been done in such a way that it's as direct a translation as possible, noting that because of linguistic and cultural differences, of course they are not literal translations, but they're not adaptations. So they're as close as possible to facilitate making comparisons between language, to use your dominant language to learn an additional language.